Ich heiße Sie herzlich willkommen bei uns in der JF-Redaktion zu einer neuen Folge von JF-TV Interview. Heute zu Gast Jason Miller, frisch eingeflogen aus den USA. Er ist Geschäftsführer des Twitter-Konkurrenten GETTR, der jetzt sein einjähriges Jubiläum feiert. Und wegen unseres Gastes wechseln wir natürlich jetzt ins Englische. Für Sie haben wir aber Untertitel. Mr. Miller, welcome and 1 year of GETTR. How is your baby, please?
Well, it's so good to be back in Berlin. And I tell you, it's now been 1 year since we've launched GETTR on our 4th of July, which is our National Independence Day. But it also is the day that we urge people to declare their independence from big tech. And I'm pleased to say that we're now up to almost 6 million users from around the world, half in the United States, half in the rest of the world. And Germany is one of our top 5 markets.
Well, especially in Germany, the GETTR is very controversial. It's attacked by liberals or even by government officials as right-winged. What do you think about that?
Well, I think that there are many people who don't like the fact that power is being taken away from the establishment elites and free speech is being given back to people. And whether you're a publisher of a magazine or a newspaper or a radio program or a free speech outlet, they try to attack what they can't control. What we're glad to have is a platform that opens up free speech for everybody. If you're on the political left, if you're on the political right, if you don't care about politics at all, we treat everybody the same. In your political opinion, your free speech is always going to be protected with us.
But, Mr. Elon Musk has announced that he would like to buy Twitter and to open it for even political or politically incorrect speech. And is this a problem for GETTR? Maybe GETTR is not useful anymore?
No, because obviously, as we say in America, the proof is in the pudding. It's the actual actions that will make sense. And so if Elon Musk is able to take over Twitter, which I don't know if that deal is ever going to work, changing the culture within Twitter is going to be very hard. I think anything short of offering President Donald Trump his account back, I believe will be insufficient. But, one of the things I want to touch on here, you notice that Elon Musk, richest man in the world, is trying to buy Twitter. He's not trying to buy the failing New York Times. He's not trying to buy fake news CNN. He's not trying to buy Der Spiegel. What he's doing is getting Twitter because he believes that the social media space, the digital marketplace, the town square is where the real discussions are happening. That shows why GETTR is so important.
Well, actually, you're right that it's not sure if this deal will happen, the Elon Musk deal. So you don't think that he will buy Twitter?
So ultimately, I don't think the deal goes through. But even if it did, I think changing the culture there is going to be difficult. It's not just a matter of replacing leadership or a few of the top executives. You have to replace every entry-level person to change the culture. I frequently joke that it's going to be easier for him to land a rocket on Mars than it will be to change the culture inside of Twitter.
Okay, then tell us more about the culture in GETTR, please.
So the culture in GETTR, we have 2 main principles: that we support free speech and that we oppose cancel culture. Those are the 2 guiding lights, the 2 guideposts that we follow. Even our logo, the torch, is about bringing freedom and democracy to places where we don't have it. Right now, most of the passion in the free speech debate is in the center right. That's just where, because the debate is because many people are being kicked off of Twitter and Facebook and other accounts for their political beliefs. But the pendulum is going to swing back. There will be a day in the not too distant future where people in the center left say, wait a minute, now we're being kicked off. We wish we had a platform that didn't discriminate politically, and we will be here for those people as well.
So your logo is the torch, which is the torch, or it reminds of the torch of the Statue of Liberty. Is this done by purpose?
Very much so. And this is, again, when you think about places that are in a free speech darkness. You think of China with the CCP. You think of Russia, for example. These are places where you can't express yourself. And I think many people in America, I can speak to this as an American, take free speech for granted. And as Americans, I think we've gotten lazy and not appreciating this value, because as soon as we lose free speech, we become an authoritarian state, just like the China or Russia. We can't allow that to happen.
And does GETTR face the same attacks and problems like in Germany, in the US, in your home country?
So it's a little bit different. I think the political movement is already well established that there are alternative platforms or alternative media outlets, things of that nature. But again, it's where we really see our growth being not just people who are passionate about politics, but people who are passionate about sports or entertainment. Maybe they have their political opinions, but they're known for other things. I take, for example, Matt Letizia in the UK, who was voted the best British football player of all time. He's a Hall of Fame football player, but he's on GETTR hosting a weekly show because he's now become very outspoken. He wants to get his beliefs out there. If you were to ask him if he was Tory or Labour or something of that, I don't even think he would identify with the party, but he does identify with making his voice heard. Those are the type of people that we want to have on GETTR, regardless of what country you're from.
So freedom of speech in political sense is very important, but it's not all. GETTR is freedom of life.
Right. And so what we've done is we've combined the best things from social media, whether it be our timeline, which competes with Twitter and Facebook, the live streaming, which frankly competes with any content creator that's out there, because we now have people hosting shows and streaming live on GETTR from all around the world, different languages. There can be dozens of shows being on at any given time, but it has that political belief, but then also the freedom, as we talk about, of expression with Vision, our short video competitor to TikTok and Instagram Reels, and even freedom of your financial future when we launch GETTR Pay and GETTR Coin later this summer.
But unfortunately, there's also critics on GETTR from users. A very successful and important, in the United States, important podcaster called Joe Rogan publicly called GETTR Fugazi. So something which is a kind of betrayal, and because it showed the wrong numbers of followers, too many followers. What do you reply to his accusations?
So this was a case of where engineering team's excitement got ahead of our actual product delivery. And what we have now on GETTR is you can actually post on GETTR and have your post show up on Twitter. So we call it cross-posting, meaning that you don't have to go back and look at Twitter anymore. Your content is still going to show up there if you have an audience or you have people built in. And so we show on GETTR, here's your total number of GETTR followers, and then here's your overall number of followers with GETTR and Twitter combined. And then later on, if we add in Instagram or Facebook or other things. So there was a stretch there for about a month or two to where it listed the total number of followers, but we did not yet have the cross-posting enabled. That just happened to be the week that Joe Rogan joined the platform. It was a mistake. It's now corrected. So when it shows your total followers, say if I post on GETTR and it shows up on Twitter, it shows how many I have in total between the two. It wasn't enabled when he made his comments. Frustrating, a little bit of a self-forced error, but it's all corrected now.
Okay, and have you excused or talked to him, Mr.
I spoke with his producer. I haven't spoken. I've still to this day never spoken with Joe Rogan. He joined the platform on his own. He promoted it on his own. And so I've never spoke with him. I've tried to. He's a pretty famous guy. I haven't been able to get through to him, but I did speak with his producer and explain it.
Yeah. Perhaps we have to mention that he's not only important in the US, actually he's the most important podcaster in the whole world. Yep. So because of that, it's interesting even for viewers out of the United States of this interview. Please, what will GETTR offer its users in the future?
Well, GETTR's value proposition, in addition to being a free speech platform, is always going to be about the technology. The fact that we're taking all the best parts of social media, the best parts of different social media platforms, and putting them together in one place. So as we start to expand Vision, our short video competitor, to TikTok and Instagram Reels, that's going to help pull in a younger audience, people who are maybe less politically driven, more into entertainment or their daily lives. And going ahead, as we look at some of the additional features that we have coming up, whether it be GETTR Pay, GETTR Coin, and others, it's going to keep the focus on the technology. That's something we can go toe-to-toe with on big tech any day.
Mr. Miller, you are also a personal friend and former assistant of President Trump, or former President Trump. What do you think about the struggle, the current struggle in the Republican Party which is now going on between the side of the Trump and the establishment.
Well, to be clear on this, the political party is squarely behind President Trump, the party of Republicans. Now, there are a number of elected officials in Washington that are no longer responsive to their constituencies, no longer responsive to the Republican Party, who are opponents or enemies of President Trump. It's very small, but much of the mainstream media in the U.S. gives them a lot of attention because they also don't like President Trump. But the party itself is squarely behind the president.
So what do you think? Who will win the struggle?
Well, ultimately, we saw in 2016 and 2020 that President Trump will continue to be the leader of the Republican Party. I think he'll be the leader of the party going into the midterms this year in 2022. And then I think he will be our nominee for president in 2024.
But his candidates have lost, for example, Georgia. So it's not only a victory run.
Well, and part of it is to, look, President Trump has made some endorsements that I wish he hadn't made. But voters are smart. Voters are independent. Voters are going to look and decide which candidate they like the best. And I think in a couple of these cases, the president was given some bad advice on who to endorse. And his candidates did not stand up well. But there are other candidates. You look at J.D. Vance, who became the Senate nominee in Ohio, wouldn't have won without President Trump. You look at Dr. Oz in Pennsylvania, would not have won without President Trump. So you definitely want President Trump's endorsement, but it has been shown that if he endorses a candidate that's inferior, that always doesn't mean victory.
What role does GETTR play in these inner elections of the Republican Party?
Well, I think it gives voters a crucial battleground to go and debate the issues, a place where the contrast of ideas is going to be focused on. And also, too, I think if we're purely going by what, say, the New York Times or CNN was saying, here are the issues of the day, those might not be the top issues for many Republican voters. You can actually have those conversations, those debates on GETTR. And as we broaden out and expand, obviously we want to get those for, say, even in Democratic primaries and even in other countries. As we're covering, people were live streaming one of the party conferences this past weekend here in Germany. We had coverage of the elections in France and in Colombia. So we're really trying to put the global spin on this.
Well, you are, as I said, you are a friend of President Trump or of Donald Trump. Is GETTR taking side?
So GETTR as a platform does not endorse or take sides in any race or even with any contest. Now, myself personally, I'm not going to pretend I'm somebody I'm not. I'm very much an unabashed supporter of President Trump. I'm a conservative Republican with decades of experience of advocating for Republican candidates. But we want people from across the spectrum, all sorts of Republicans, all sorts of Democrats, again, people from all around the world. This is an open place because I want people, even if they disagree with me, and there are plenty of people that disagree with me, I want them to know they have a safe place to disagree on GETTR.
Okay, then the following question is not going to US CEO of GETTR, but as associate of Mr. Trump. Would he really be the right candidate for the Republican Party for the election in 24 because of his behavior after the election of 2020, which disqualified him, didn't it?
Well, I would say that many people in the Democratic Party would have a problem with that, but there are also, I think, many of the same people that wouldn't have voted for him before. Even if the horrific attack of January 6th had never happened, these people still would have opposed him at the first opportunity that they did. If you look back, what a lot of people might not realize is President Trump received more votes from Black Americans, Asian Americans, Latino Americans, than any other Republican in the modern era, the most since 1972. He has changed the Republican Party to be much more representative of working class people, regardless of race or ideology, people who actually have to work for a living. We're seeing the same populist pushback all around the world, from Brexit in the UK to President Bolsonaro in Brazil to Prime Minister Modi in India.
Okay, I see, but Mr. Trump refused to acknowledge the election results, and he incited his supporters to go to the Capitol. Has he really the moral integrity? Well,
I think there are a couple of things to unpack there, because it's important for people to understand that President Trump and many of the people on his team very passionate about making sure that we got the correct answer with regard to the election. I'm someone who encouraged President Trump to pursue all available legal means and legal recourse to try to get the right answers for what happened in the election. And I'm also someone who realizes that Joe Biden is now the president of the United States. I might not like it, but obviously I want to help vote him out in 2024. I think he's embarrassing the U.S. all around the world, but he is the president right now. I would say with regard to January 6th, though, is that at no time did President Trump ever encourage violence or encourage illegal activity with regard to the Capitol. And there can be a debate about could he have put out a tweet earlier? Could he have given a different message to people when he saw the activity that was the illegal activity that was happening? That's a debatable point. But when it comes to what did President Trump do, I do not believe that President Trump encouraged any illegal activity on that day.
He did it indirectly. I think this is evident by his words, by his tweets. You don't consider it like that?
I don't, and I'll tell you why, because I helped to quarterback the president's second impeachment trial after the episodes of January 6th. And using words such as fight, in America, every politician uses the word fight. In fact, one of the things we did at the trial was we showed video of every single Democrat in the Senate and every single Democrat on the impeachment panel using the word fight. Some were yelling, saying we're going to, Maxine Waters, the absolutely crazy congresswoman from California, saying we need to go and challenge and get in their faces and go to their homes. To me, that gets a little scary. That's inciting violence. Or we had a very monotone Chuck Schumer saying, we have to fight. So we played, but we used the word fight for everybody there. So I think you have to separate what is acceptable and standard political rhetoric and say that the people who went and caused these illegal acts on January 6th, some of that was already in place before the president gave his speech. And anyone who destroyed property, assaulted law enforcement, anything of that nature should be held fully accountable.
Okay, you yourself were also a subject of the congressional hearing on the storming of the Capitol on 6th of January, and you are making accusations against the actions there. Please, what exactly are you accusing the investigation committee of? Yeah,
so to give people a little bit of the insight, so the January 6th panel that's happening from Congress, Congress in the United States has an oversight ability to, whether in the House or the Senate, to oversight government functions, government activities, to make sure that there's a check and balance. It's very important because maybe it's getting into the way government money is being spent, the way government operations are being run, is government being honest and accountable to its people. Very important. It's been like that since the beginning. The Department of Justice, which is part of our legal system, they are separate from that. They're the ones who actually go and prosecute people or investigate. So the Department of Justice has already charged some 800 people with illegal activity on that day. The justice system is working just fine. What Congress is doing is trying to inflict political harm on President Trump by having primetime hearings and only inviting people who are opponents of President Trump to come speak and testify so they can beat him up politically. Now, in my case, I was subpoenaed and I had to comply with that. Otherwise, I could face up to a year in jail if you don't comply with a congressional subpoena. Contempt of Congress. Contempt of Congress is no joke. It could be a $100,000 fine and a year in jail. So if they subpoena you have to go and unless there's some compelling legal thing where you think that you're going to have an exemption. And other people have challenged that, but you need a lot of money to go and challenge that. Anyway, so I sat down for some 10 and a half hours. And in one of the segments that they used, they asked, were you ever around President Trump when he was told that he wasn't going to win? And I recapped a scene in the Oval Office of a data person on our team telling the president he did not think he would win. The next question, what was President Trump's reaction? And I recapped for the deposition that President Trump said to the data expert, you're a data guy. You're not following the legal challenges and the examples of fraud and irregularity, so I disagree with your assessment. It's not just about the data that you're saying. Plus, this data expert had gotten a lot of things wrong, so there wasn't much confidence in him. But when the congressional hearing played the clip, they only played the clip of me recapping how another person said that President Trump likely wouldn't win. They didn't play the next part of my answer. So it made it look like they're trying to pit President Trump allies versus President Trump. And they did that intentionally. And there's a reason. The January 6th committee has even come under extreme criticism for not releasing all the transcripts so people can see for themselves what is being selectively edited or not.
What is also discussed on GETTR is that the US is the debate in the US is focusing on the storming of the Capitol, but there have been deaths among the demonstrators. And two of them obviously have been killed by the police force. And this is a subject which many GETTR users criticize is forgotten in the debate.
It is, and again, I think the events of that day, I think were tragic. I wish that the Capitol leaders, whether it be Nancy Pelosi, whether it be the mayor of D.C., Muriel Bowser, who might be the biggest disaster of a mayor, I think, on the entire planet. She's absolutely horrific. I wish they'd taken up President Trump on his offer to have 20,000 National Guard troops that were available. You would think that somebody there at the Capitol would see that there was a large protest developing, say, hey guys, we need some backup, we need additional assistance. And you would think that they wouldn't wait until they were effectively overrun before they started doing anything. But, to the point about, say, like an Ashley Babbitt, the woman who was shot, that should have been avoided. That absolutely should have been avoided. And I think shame on everyone who turned down the request for additional help on that day. But Ashley Babbitt should still be alive.
So can GETTR help to get justice for Mrs. Babbitt?
Well, I don't think that's GETTR's role. I think that I have a personal belief that I think that there should be some justice for what happened to Ashley Babbitt. But again, that's my personal opinion. But GETTR's job is to make sure that we can have the debate on the tough issues that are out there. So, for example, when congressional leaders asked the head of the FBI, were there any FBI informants that were part of the mob who were going into the Capitol, and the director of the FBI didn't give an answer to the member of Congress asking the question. He gave kind of a runaround, a non-answer. That's problematic. I think some of these discussions are going to stay alive on GETTR. You take a look at the fact, this was something I even just recently posted on GETTR, the fact that the media in the U.S. is not talking about the assassination attempt on Supreme Court Justice Kavanaugh, how there was a man that was planning to kill him. That was swept under the rug and gone in a matter of hours. He's a more conservative member on the court. That's something that if it was, say, Sonia Sotomayor, or one of the more left of center, Elena Kagan, one of the left of center Democrats or left of center liberals that are on the Supreme Court, it would be a story every single day in the media. So there are a number of issues that I think Congress should be focused on, even why the riots happened in the summer of 2020. And were those being coordinated? Were they being orchestrated? But life's not always fair.
Okay. And final question, what is GETTR, what can GETTR do to make life more fair or perhaps more beautiful? Because as you mentioned in the beginning, it's not only all about politics on GETTR.
Well, GETTR is at the tip of the spear of protecting free speech and making sure that we decentralize the flow of information so people aren't necessarily constricted by what the mainstream media tells them they can listen to or watch or believe. And so with GETTR, we want to make sure that people get the answers, that they get the truth, they get all the information so that they can make the decision for themselves on what to believe and what not to believe, rather than have it fed to them by people who are, say, ideologically opposed to their very position. Because ultimately what this is about is control. When you see the woke mob saying they want to force their ideology on people, that's about control. When you see authoritarian governments trying to take away free speech rights, force mandates and requirements on people, that's about control. When you see more of your money being taken away, that's about control. What we want to do is give the control back to people. Make social media fun again, give people a positive place where they can go to express themselves and knowing that they're never going to be discriminated against politically.
Mr. Miller, thank you very much for everything. Und auch Ihnen danken wir ganz herzlich, dass Sie dabei waren und hoffen, dass Sie auch das nächste Mal wieder einschalten bei JF-TV. Alles Gute aus Berlin.